Right, let's go. Right, brilliant. So let's kick off, guys. So this is the Tuesday call. This is the opportunity where we're reflecting on what's happening in the outside world and also trying to get a grip on the urgency of the situation, what to do about it. So I'm Tom Pickering. I'm the CEO of Icebreaker and Winning Thinking. The main sense of urgency, I think, is coming from a lack of cash. So there's 27 days worth of cash, and specifically at business level, a guy I know spoke in the construction business is running out of cash on the 27th of May, even having furloughed their business. I think the first thing is we're all wearing old pairs of glasses, so to use an analogy. These an old pair, sort of pretentious pair, branded pair of glasses, utterly useless, and we need a new pair of glasses. The second thing is also we need new pencils. We need to sharpen our pencils. These pencils are two I found my kids, and neither of those two are any use really. They're blunt, and they do not actually share. They do not actually do the job, and we're throwing these things away. We're not actually fixing them. We're also facing a tidal wave, not a storm. So recent estimates before the US economy got hit very badly was that the world economy was down 24%. It now looks like the estimate is down 44%. One of the critical things about a turnaround is that you are planning for the downside, right? So you're mitigating the downside. You're actually looking for that and actually clearly planning for the upside. Furthermore, I think furloughing workers is not a fix. It creates a listless business. And I think we've got a pretty narrow window of about 3 weeks to actually fix some of this stuff. And I think there's two aspects to this. One is the personal side, which David will respond to, and also from a business perspective, which Mike and I will respond to. This is in the difficult category, guys, because rethinking is hard. And it's something we're very unfamiliar with, and we'll give some examples of that. The big question for this call is government help realistic to look to recover and resolve the COVID-19 crisis? Secondly, is government help enough and sustainable? There's a lot of evidence suggests that actually they can only do this once, so it certainly doesn't seem like it's something worth relying on. David is then going to talk about how does fear and paralysis spread through an organisation and what to do about that. Mike's then going to talk about how to get commerce going, and I'm going to talk about a real situation where a business actually faces exactly the same challenge and how can you get it back to profit. This business got hit with 70% reduction in revenue, and we got it back to profit in 2 weeks. So that's a real example. This is not theory, guys. This is a practitioner's perspective. That's, to be honest, I have limited time or patience for academics in this type of environment. So we're giving you the crown jewels in terms of experience. The interesting thing about the government bailing the UK out is that more debt is actually the root cause of the challenge that we face rather than the solution. The other challenge with this is that organisations are not paying as well, so there's debt is drying, well, the movement of cash between businesses, so even good businesses are likely to get hit very hard with collateral damage from that. And this pub has been established, we call it the pub to make sure it's sort of relatively informal, not too stuffy, where we can have a discussion, but we're also looking for participation from the people on the call, so please feel free to ask any questions. So the one issue is also around how do these issues already exist? So the challenge is how on earth, so COVID-19 is very much the precipitator of the crisis, but actually isn't the issue per se. Example of that is house prices in the UK, which actually have been normalised, but actually they've been inflated for a very long time and been fueling the economy for the last at least 12 years or so. That's become fudged, it's become normalised, but that's a great example of something in the economy which we're not seeing, we're not addressing. At the end of this as well, I'm going to talk about one single action that you can take to transform profit. And David, more interestingly enough and more immediately, is going to talk about how to navigate a minefield as a Royal Marine, and the personal challenge of that as a young Army officer. So that's my introduction, guys. So David's going to speak, then Mike's going to speak, then I'm going to finish it off with a simple action to achieve profit. One simple thing. Over to you, David.
Aye, and thank you very much. And Tom, yes, so for those of you that don't know me, David McLean, I'm a senior psychotherapist and work within human behaviour, individuals and within business as well, of course. And as he mentioned, I used to be, I have a former Royal Marine, 15 years I did, a few operational tours, etc. So I certainly understood, I suppose, the kind of the key aspect that I want to talk about fear. So as you said, the kind of the main question that we're talking about, the responsibility of the government, the responsibility of us as business leaders, and my sort of sub-question within that, that I want to talk about really is in terms of human behaviour. How does the fear and paralysis, how does this affect the individual? How does the situation that's going on at the moment, how does that affect the individual? And how does that then, unfortunately, often spread to the team, the wider department, and then of course infecting, inverted commas, the whole business. So I'd like to start with that little story that Tom spoke about there, and it was a good few years ago now, in 2001, 2002. When I was in the Marines, I was in Afghanistan, and I was a person that was selected to go. I don't know if you've heard of a grouping, you probably have, they're called the Mujahideen. They were supporting us against the Taliban. I was asked to walk down there, walk down a particular hill to go and collect them. Now, what it was, we had maps, of course, and minefields or mines that had been already struck and went off, there was a little red dot on the map so they knew where to avoid. And the area that I had to walk was so many mines that the whole area was just red. So I felt pretty bad about that, obviously. And I remember thinking, why me? Why am I the victim? Why is it me that's getting kind of chosen to do this? Why not someone else? And we kind of see how can we relate business to a minefield, but actually in principle there's many, not exactly the same actually. So if we think about it, the victim, why me? Why have I been chosen to do this? In other words, when we move it to business, of course, the government, why has this happened? This is not my fault. Why am I supposed to sort this out? Why is the government not stepping up? Tremendously disempowering point to make within the self as an individual, and something that we need to address, of course. Within the military, within the Marines, I had to do this for the greater good. I had to do it for the section, the troop that I was part of, the company, the unit, which is a regiment, basically, is the same thing. That's what we call it in the Marines. And of course, the wider policy as well for Afghanistan. So again, when you bring that to business, you need to sort of recognise that it needs to be for everyone. You know, what you stand, every individual needs to stand up. And of course, we need to stand up for wider business community, but importantly for the company that you're working for, that you're leading, or that you're owning, so to speak. So generalising. Now, moving to the kind of points, what is it the main aspects that's stopping us from moving forward? What's that thing, that paralysis, of course, is the question asked, and it's quite simply fear. There's a statement, one of my favourite statements that you may have well heard before: thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions, and actions produce our results. So it's our thoughts, the thoughts of fear, that create feelings of terror, which means we don't act, or we do different things, we act irrationally, and of course you don't get the results that you want. So it's so important that you work through that, all those different sort of areas, if you like. There's many valid points. We understand, of course, from a psychological point of view, from a neuroscientific point of view, that when you're in that fear state, when the metaphorical stress bucket is filled up, you're pushed down into an area in the centre of the brain called the amygdala. Some of you may well have heard of that before, I'm sure you have. I term that as a fire officer. So if we're in some sort of danger, what we want to do if we're in the building is normal, it's on fire, we want the fire officers, we want the firemen and women to come in and take over and do the job needed. And that's exactly the same in the brain. The fire officer, the amygdala, steps in and does exactly what's necessary. Now, that's fantastic in a burning building, but not so much when you're in this fear-based scenario, and actually what you're trying to do is work through it. So we're in that kind of paralysis aspect, that fight, flight, or freeze aspect. So what is it that we do about this, of course? There's a few different things that we need to do, but to at least give you some pointers, some pointers to sort of move forward with. At the moment, to carry on Tom's analogy, you need new glasses. You need to gain clarity of thought around what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And this sounds like a kind of an obvious point, but it's something that people don't often do when they're trying to move away from a problem. But we need to start looking for solutions, not solving problems. It's very, very important. Another statement that we use in the Marines is that no plan survives first contact. The military, the Marines have tremendous hours and hours and hours of planning what to do. And then when the first bullet comes that way towards you, the plan's out the window and we need to do something different. We need to, again, as we say, adapt and overcome. And this is the position that businesses are in at the moment as well. I need to adapt and overcome. I need to do something different. This is different territory for everyone, so that we need different solutions and to move in a different place. And of course, if you need some help, and we can certainly help moving that forward as well, and help you in the areas of expertise that we have as a group, as a unit, that can help you move forward and create that change and survival within business.
Great. Thank you, David. And so if there's maybe one thing to take away from that great story, what would it be that the delegates can actually act on now?
The one main thing from the history, my story of the minefield, sorry.
Yeah.
I think, I suppose, is to take control at the individual level. Recognise that there's nobody going to save us. The government might end up helping and saving to an extent, but take responsibility as the individual, particularly the business leaders, of course. Take full responsibility, whether it's your fault or not, and of course it's not, generally speaking. Take full responsibility for where you are, and then do the necessary things to move forward.
That's really a fantastic steer. Any other questions? Any thoughts, Mike, on that?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting subject, this, because I think that the military analogy or metaphor is very relevant to the situation of extreme risk for our economy. And if you look around, and I've been talking to a lot of people in the last weeks, and there's been a various response to this lockdown from the business sector. Some businesses have completely shut down, furloughed their staff. Some have even laid off a huge proportion of their staff. And some on the other end of the spectrum are actually, they're making a plan. Some people are working from home. If they're manufacturers, they have skeleton staffs manning key machines, making sure they're producing for key customers who need their input. And what we as business people and business leaders need to remember is that commerce and industry is actually the backbone of the UK economy. This is a great strength of this country, the incredible range of businesses, and both very large businesses and an extremely vibrant SME sector. So as business people, our response is now critically important, because a lot of people are dying from this terrible virus, but equally, we need to think against the day of how do we take care of the economy, and how do we make sure there are jobs for the survivors of this pandemic. And here we actually need to look inside ourselves, and we need to have a positive and energetic mindset. We need to show this leadership. We should be looking for new opportunities and developing new perspectives on what the opportunities are. Last week, I think we were discussing a baker who was focused on the retail market, who was in terrible trouble because now he had to close down his operation, and he was faced with financial ruin. But he looked around and he managed to get a contract with one of the large national retail chains. And that has actually transformed his business. He's never been doing so well. So we need to acknowledge our underlying problems and weaknesses. We've definitely had them going into this crisis, there's been problems with our business models, and we need to acknowledge that and address these problems and weaknesses. We need to also be thinking, as Tom was saying earlier, we need to think strategically and understand where our blind spots and mantras and generalizations sit. And then we need to develop a plan. But a plan needs to also be focused on the problem that needs to be fixed. So we need to get the right problem to fix for a start. And of course, as David said earlier, we need to be looking beyond just this government support. They're not going to be able to save the economy. I was talking just before this COVID-19 crisis to the MD of a business, and the comments that he made are very instructive, because the first comment he made to me is, "I can't rely on anybody." The second comment that I had from him was, "Operation 2 is too far away. We must just simply close it down." And then his third comment was, "Division number 1 is unfixable. It's just a mess in terms of products and manufacturing, and we just need to close that whole thing down." So, you know, if you listen to those kind of comments, it actually creates an inability to act. These appear to be totally insoluble problems, and all we have to do is shut down businesses and do nothing about it. And instead, what we've got to do is identify what the problem is to fix. And I'd like you to think about it in this sort of situation, because I believe there are a lot of MDs out there who have similar statements that are being made and similar generalizations that they're adopting. It's essential to get our teams together and develop our own process and plan. And we need to do this against the background that David has sketched, as Tom has sketched. People are seriously frightened by what's going on. And so we need to get them out of that paralyzing fear and create forward movement. I'm now going to just wrap up on what winning thinking is all about. For us, winning thinking is not a framework that simply churns out a solution once you've given us a set of facts and information. It is actually more of a process that guides your thinking in a completely integrated manner and assists teams to understand their business, to flag up questions that enable the team to identify what the real problem is that we need to fix. And then it provides the impetus for actions that will very significantly improve your company's performance. And Tom will talk a little bit about this in one particular very, very powerful turnaround that he was involved in. And the other aspect about winning thinking is it helps the business leader and the team in their personal lives as well, in terms of receiving self-satisfaction about what we do in life. And that is a huge part of our motivation in being involved in business. So I'm going to hand you back to Tom now, and he's going to have a word there.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think there's something I'd add to that. I think when we've all talked about generalizations, the difficulty with generalizations is that we react to them and respond to them like they're rational statements, when in fact, if you respond to something that's irrational, you get nowhere and you waste a lot of time. In fact, worse, it creates conflict. But thanks for that, Mike. It was very clear. I think the other thing, guys, is we are also, we're here to help and provide a solution. So be under no illusion that we do have a solution to this. Otherwise, I certainly wouldn't be wasting my time on this call. So the other point about this, I'll talk about a turnaround, and I'll give one very straightforward action in terms of to get a listless business back to profit. And this is a business who got back to profit in 2 weeks. But what was the issue to fix? This business was hemorrhaging £400,000 a month. The revenue dropped from 24 million down to 7 million, and the overdraft was still geared up at a 24 million business at 2.4 million overdraft, and it was hemorrhaging 400 grand a month. So you can imagine the bank were a bit concerned about this. Interestingly enough, this was introduced to me by a corporate financier who thought everything was sort of okay. Just go and have a look at this, Tom. Doesn't seem quite right. And in fact, the business was really fundamentally shot. The problem to fix was we cannot find the right people. And originally my engagement with these guys was potentially to provide some support operationally to replace their operations director. But actually that statement hit me like a sledgehammer. It's a negative generalization. It's flawed. And interesting enough, they'd already cut this business back. So a lot of businesses have been furloughed, but actually it was still making no money. It was slow, listless. People were really pretty lifeless. So what were the implications? They were quite dramatic. The bank wanted what prompted the discussion was the bank wanted a meeting on Monday or Tuesday, in fact. And I had a call on Sunday night with these guys. I said, look, okay, let's get started. What I did with the two directors, first of all, is I played back their own thinking to them to ask them what was the implications of their own thinking. So when they actually said to me, we can't find the right people, I asked them specifically, how did the rest of the staff feel about that, for example, to make them aware of the implications of some of these statements. So the interesting thing was this was a very high margin business. They gave away a lot of their value. One of the things you talk about, David, a lot is speaking from a positive perspective. And so they had a very dismissive view of their products and where the profitability came from. So there's a great opportunity to check and reset that and actually get the gross margins right to actually start selling the product right. Alongside this as well, we had a very imperfect team, but let's face it, teams are very imperfect. If we think we're any more perfect than the people around us, that's not a great start. So there was a very interesting, the production manager was someone I identified walking around the shop floor. I realised he could do the job. The engineering director was a guy who wanted to be paid twice the salary he already had, but he picked up someone else's work. The FD was a bit bent. To be honest, some of the actions that had been taken, she was already becoming complicit. And the existing directors were sort of pretty much gone past the point of no return, although one of them actually wanted to remain. The first thing I did was, even in that situation, was to sort of put all the past behind, which is a difficult thing to do because that can overwhelm you. And then said, right, okay, what needs to happen? So identified what needs to happen. I ascertained the capability that team I just mentioned also by asking them questions. And I gave them something quite unique. And what was unique was an opportunity that they'd never had before. So this opportunity was to actually give them these tasks, which is quite a unique opportunity in a way that actually would support without being threatening and getting that engagement right. I then got the team together to actually on a daily basis, because it was so critical, because this business was losing so much money and the governance had to be got right, to check all the decision making, because on a daily basis that's the time when people make these statements. And also I used that time to play back when one of these directors said something like, we can't find the right people, or a negative generalization like that. I'd get one of the staff to play back to them. How do they feel about that? And what's the implications, to actually get that dialogue and the openness going. Alongside this, personally, I picked up some of the stakeholder management as well. So a lot of the suppliers were obviously pretty concerned about this situation. Some of them I knew. It was an electronics business, so I knew them pretty well from the past. I also cascaded the budgets and the decision-making responsibility. So, and the other interesting thing about this was that the bank thought they had the eyes and ears in this business, but in fact, they appointed their own FD. In fact, I managed to avoid speaking to that person for the whole time I was there, which was for 2 weeks. Given the fact I was calling meetings left, right, and centre, that's quite an achievement to be so invisible. In fact, even they had no idea how bad this situation was. So beware of watching the financials. The financials always lag activity. So how can you get the whole team on board and get complete information from day one, and in parallel handle all these situations and put the past behind you? That's a critical question. So what actually happened in this business was that because I gave these people the opportunity, they grew 10 feet tall. So the production manager created a plan, we double the turnover of that business in 2 weeks, and generated enough cash from that work. We changed commercial model as well. We set a template in place to make sure all the work that came into the business met this new commercial model, the new gross margins, which is a trigger, key control. So we put all that in place and got this business back to profit in 2 weeks. Out of this whole situation, guys, I want to share with you one thing, right? And it's this, and it's a bit of a strange analogy, a bit like my glasses and pencils thing, wherever they've gone. So this analogy is this. My newsletter I sent out yesterday, I asked my 13-year-old daughter to edit it. I know my daughter extremely well, and I didn't think that she was actually up to doing this. I didn't think she's a sporting type girl. I didn't think played to her strengths. I gave her the opportunity, and she far exceeded my expectations. And also the way I engaged with her, because I know how to get some of this engagement right, meant that she really felt 10 feet tall when she was doing that task. So going back to what I was talking about, the large organisation that was using this category of emergency, actually, rather than create an emergency, you can actually still fire on all cylinders. So we have to be very careful that we're not reducing down the opportunities for individuals, because that's where risk lies. And in these situations, we need to open up the opportunities to get those back on track. So that is the key thing. So I'd like to challenge you all with this, that to think about giving someone something to do and letting them do it. That is quite a unique opportunity. And that's really the crux of the Winning Thinking program as well. So that's my summary. Is there anything else, David, you'd like to add, or Mike?
No, I'm happy, thank you.
No, nothing from my side, Tom.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys, from anybody in the audience? Great. Thanks very much. We're running this again on Tuesday. We may do one Thursday, depending on what's happening. Things are moving very fast, so please feel free to join us next Tuesday for the next update, where we'll share our updates and observations. Cheers, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.